What's going on, guys? We're watching HPG Studios, and we got a jam-packed episode with a recap of the NFL Draft, so let's get right into it. So let's talk about some of the surprises. So the first one that I'd like to mention is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire went 32nd overall to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think this is interesting because I never really had him that high on the board. I mean, I was thinking he was probably going to be like mid to late second, maybe a third round. Surprising that he was going to, that he went that high and he went over guys like Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. He's good in the pass game, and that's definitely what they're going to need with Mahomes, because he's dynamic, and Damian Williams is going to kind of play that role. So we got an interesting backfield here for the Chiefs. I don't necessarily see that he was the best running back in this draft. But maybe the Chiefs know something we don't. It was the same thing with Alex Smith. I was kind of wondering when Mahomes, when they let go of Alex Smith to the Redskins, and they were saying, Mahomes is going to be the guy. I didn't really understand. I didn't know why. It seemed like Alex Smith, kind of had, priority there. He'd been a veteran. He'd been there forever. And Mahomes was a guy who played in like 2 games in his rookie year. But like I said, maybe the Chiefs know something we don't. So, second thing I'd like to talk about is CeeDee Lamb's drop to the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is a great pick for the Cowboys. They're already pretty deep at wide receiver. They have Michael Gallup. They got Amari Cooper, obviously. And I think they just get better here. But I think he's going to make Dak look good. I think he's going to be a good complement to Amari Cooper. I think he's a great pick. I'm surprised he fell this far and that he was the 3rd receiver taken over Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy. But I think this is going to be a great pick for Dallas. Is Jalen Hurts going 53rd overall to the Eagles? It's just surprising, but I do think that what the Eagles needed the most was receiver, and they kind of addressed that need with Jalen Reagor in the first round. And they also traded for Marquise Goodwin, so they're going to have burners on the sides. You can put pretty much any of them in the slot, and then you have Deshaun Jackson, you have Alshon Jeffrey, so they have a pretty deep core. So I don't think that people should really be that upset about Hurts going to the Eagles, considering that they addressed their biggest need. And I'm seeing reports that maybe Hurts is going to be used like a Taysom Hill kind of guy, and I saw something that he was going to be potentially changed to a running back or a wide receiver completely, which I'm not really buying into that. I think Jalen Hurts showed arm talent at Oklahoma that he didn't show at Alabama. I think he showed a lot of improvement. So you never know. We could be looking back here and we're going to say, wow, the Eagles were geniuses, because 5 years in the future, let's say Wentz's injuries get the best of him, and that, Jalen Hurts is able to step up and really make a contribution to the team, and he could even potentially be like trade value. Let's say, Wentz gets hurt and he goes in for a couple games, and he looks really good, but they still have decided, that Wentz is the guy. It's kind of like maybe like a Nick Foles scenario. Where Nick Foles, played really well. He won the Super Bowl for them, but they still decided that Wentz was the guy, which ultimately I believe was the right decision. And it's seeming like that started to pan out, even though I feel that Nick Foles didn't get a proper shot in Jacksonville. And now let's talk about some of the steals of this year's draft. So the first one I'd like to mention is Isaiah Simmons, who's a linebacker out of Clemson. I think he's a Swiss Army knife. He's going to be able to play slot corner for you. He's going to play inside linebacker, middle linebacker, corner, safety. It's ridiculous. The man can play all over the field. He had a quote where he said that, the roster number for NFL teams are 53, but if you get me, it's like you have 56. And I like his confidence. I definitely think he was a steal for the Cardinals. I personally believe that he's the 2nd best player in this draft, behind Chase Young. I think he has so much potential, and I think he's going to be an absolute star in Arizona. And having him fall to 8 when he could have literally been taken pretty much anywhere from 2 to anywhere in between, I think the Cardinals got good value for him. I think they were pretty lucky that he just fell right into their lap. So one that I think was a pretty amazing steal is Adam Trautman, who's a tight end out of Dayton. He was taken in the 3rd round by the Saints. He was, potentially by some of the analysts shown as the number 1 tight end on the board. I watched some of his highlight tape, and he's just strong and fast, and he's going to get those jump balls, and he's really good at creating separation. I think he's going to be a great physical threat and vertical threat for the Saints. I think Drew Brees is getting just another weapon on top of their stacked offense, and he should pair up really nicely with Jared Cook. The big sleeper I have is Antonio Gandy-Golden out of Liberty University. He was selected by the Redskins in the 4th round, and I think this guy's a stud. He's the right size. He's 6'4", and he has a lot of talent, and I think that that's a very good value pick. I heard a lot of good things about him. I watched some of his tape, and Seems like a 4th round pick was really, good value to be able to snag him. And I think he should be productive this year with, Dwayne Haskins growing and being on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin. Now I'm going to discuss a couple aspects of the draft this year that kind of had me scratching my head a little bit. That the Rams took Cam Akers in the 2nd round. J.K. Dobbins was still on the board, and Cam Akers just flat out is not better than J.K. Dobbins. I really don't see that Cam Akers is better than J.K. Dobbins. I think part of it is just bias because I really don't want to see J.K. Dobbins run over the Browns twice a year. J.K. Dobbins had a highly successful career. He was 2nd in all-time rushing yards for Ohio State. And Cam Akers is good, don't get me wrong. And they're definitely going to need a spot to fill the void of Todd Gurley. I was surprised that J.K. Dobbins fell that far. And I think the Ravens, who had the #1 rushing offense in the NFL last year, I think the rich just get richer. I think that combination of Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and J.K. Dobbins could be absolutely lethal. And now I'm going to talk about the Packers for a second. So the whole Jordan Love controversy, I'm actually going to talk about that in another video later this week. I don't understand what the case was for drafting A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round. I think he's a good running back. He's from Boston College. He's kind of been underrated his whole career. But I don't necessarily feel that the Packers are the team who needed him. They have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, who are both, were good in the pass game and really contributed to some of their success in the regular season. I just don't really think they needed to add anything to their core of running backs. So another thing about the draft that really kind of bothered me was that, in a player's happiest moment, they should be able to, relish on their accomplishments and think about how amazing it is to take the next step to go into the NFL. Pretty disrespectful that ESPN, kind of went back and they, harkened on some of the, tragic events in players' lives. Sometimes it takes away from, how amazing this achievement is. And especially with T. Higgins, I felt it was really disrespectful of them to mention that his mom had struggled with a drug addiction for 16 years, I think it was. I don't understand what that, I understand overcoming adversity and, jumping over obstacles to become, this amazing football player, and you've made it to the NFL and you've made it past all these obstacles, and that's great. I just don't think some of these things had, anything to do with, this player's journey, and I just felt like some of the aspects of the, tragic events that they were mentioning had nothing to do with the player's journey to success. We should be focusing on success instead of dwelling on tragedy, I believe. So let's talk about some of the teams that had the best drafts this year. As much as I hate to say it, I think the Ravens had one of the best drafts. I think they got a steal in Patrick Queen, who's a middle linebacker out of LSU. I think he's a great player, and I think he could have gone a lot sooner than 28, and they were pretty lucky to have him fall right in their lap. Another, as I mentioned before, is J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is a, seasoned running back who has, he has all the skills there. He's a hard-nosed runner. He's fast, he's talented, and I just think he's a good fit into their offense. And I really don't want to see him running all over the Browns twice a year. And I also think, that acquiring or drafting Devin Duvernay from Texas was a good pick too. They could use some more help at receiver, and that's definitely going to make Lamar Jackson better. And then finally, I'd like to mention about Malik Harrison from Ohio State, who's he's a big, strong guy, and they're just getting deeper at linebacker. I think the Ravens did get better overall. I think they addressed the needs that they needed to confront, and I think we could potentially be looking at a Super Bowl run from the Ravens this year. I think the Vikings had a phenomenal draft. I think it was great for them to get Justin Jefferson at 22. I think he's a perfect fit for them, and I think he should definitely, fill the void that Stephon Diggs left when he was traded to the Bills earlier this year. Cornerback Jeff Gladney out of TCU was a great pick. They got him at 31 overall. I think he should fit well in their system on the opposite side of Trey Waynes. And I think the Vikings definitely needed a little bit more help in the secondary. They addressed that throughout this draft. They drafted, it looks like, 2 safeties and 2 cornerbacks. They drafted linebacker Kenny Willekes out of Michigan State, who's pretty good too. I mean, he tore up the field against Ohio State multiple times. And I'm surprised that he fell all the way to the 7th round. And I think the Vikings could be a sleeper in the NFC this year. I think the Dallas Cowboys had a phenomenal draft this year. They were pretty lucky to have CeeDee Lamb still be there at 17. And I think he's, like I said before, that he's going to be a great fit in their offense and just make Dak Prescott look better. Cowboys also drafted Trayvon Diggs out of Alabama, who's the younger brother of Stephon Diggs. And I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to fit well in their system, and I think they could really use some help in the secondary after losing Byron Jones to the Dolphins. I think he's going to fit well there, and I also think that because of Travis Frederick retiring, that they really needed some help at center. Drafting Tyler Biadasz out of Wisconsin is going to be a really good fit for them. Hopefully he can fill the shoes that Travis Frederick left. And to step away from the draft for a minute, I'm going to talk about some other NFL news. So Jameis Winston recently signed a 1-year deal with this New Orleans Saints. I love this. I love this signing. I love Jameis Winston. He's given me so many reasons not to like him, but I still love him, and I don't know why. I've always supported him coming out of Florida State. I think he's a really good player. I think he has a ton of potential. And I think he's done a lot to really improve himself this year. I think he's shown maturity. I think he knows that a lot of the shortcomings in the Buccaneers this past season were his fault because of some of the turnovers, which is an entirely different story, and a lot of those aren't his fault, and it's partially due to the system that Bruce Arians had him playing in, and also because he didn't have great eyesight and he had LASIK eye surgery following the season. But that being said, I think the Saints are really more looking at more a mentoring thing to help out Jameis Winston. Maybe potentially he could stick around if he shows some promise this year. And I think he's shown a lot more than, Taysom Hill would, even though he was re-signed too. I know Jameis has mentioned that Drew Brees is a big mentor for him. And there's actually, an interview he did, and I'll show it to you right here.
First of all, I admire Drew Brees for the man he is and the quarterback he is, and I've always looked up to him. I always tell this story every year. I had Drew Brees' first autograph when he went to the Saints. I had seen him at a place in Birmingham, and he had gave me his autograph, so I still cherish that to this day. He probably don't remember it, but I do.
Really, I'm not a huge believer in Taysom Hill, but I think Jameis Winston really could be the guy in the future for Sean Payton and the Saints. He threw for 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns this year. I think system changes, getting LASIK eye surgery, having a better run game and a better offensive line with the Saints is definitely something that's going to contribute to his success. I think that Jameis Winston could potentially be the long-term guy for the Saints following Drew Brees' retirement. So Adam Schefter reported that Trent Williams, offensive lineman for the Washington Redskins, has been sent to the San Francisco 49ers for a 2020 5th-round pick and a 2021 3rd-round pick. He's still not too old. He brings a veteran presence, and I really think that 49ers are gaining a Pro Bowl offensive lineman for pretty cheap to already help their really strong run game. That's all I got for this episode. You're watching HPG Sports. Make sure to like and subscribe. See ya.